Hi, I'm Erin Larkin. I'm here with John Jens, and if we look a bit energised and a bit excited, it's because we've just looked at 26 of Australia's greatest Rieslings. We've whittled it down to 13. One is from Germany, 12 are from Australia. We're looking at 6 in part 1 and 6 in part 2. I'm flabbergasted. It's really exciting what we just did. The Rieslings coming out of Australia are thrillingly good. They're unbelievable.
So they've never been better, and not only did we whittle it down to what we think a very, very good 13, we're not quite sure how we've left some of the others out. They're absolutely marvellous.
Oh, yes.
This is, in my opinion, the greatest lineup of Australian Rieslings I've ever seen. But secondly, I don't reckon anybody in the country has done a better Riesling lineup than this, because we've sourced these from all over the place, even the rare, hard-to-get stuff that was never released commercially. We brought some of those in. Erin's got a great lineup for you today.
We've begged and pleaded, and this is what we're landing on. So this is part 2. So the Rieslings that we have here, we're starting in wine number 1, which is our left-hand glass, and this is the 2018 Forest Hill Block 1 Riesling from Mount Barker. Now there's 2 wines in here that are very different price points to the other 2. These retail at $40 and $35 a piece. I mean, they are ridiculously priced. They're brilliant. I thought this was exceptional. I mean, it's about precision. It's about, pick up the wrong glass, doesn't even, whoops. It's about precision, power, length. I mean, I love this wine. What was your feeling on this?
Enormous length, high acidity, dense, juicy fruit characters mid-palate, and then lingering structural, tighter, it's from the very south of the Great Southern, lingering tighter, leaner than some of the other styles, but beautifully balanced, enormous length, finish and aftertaste. Great wine, really enjoy it, and ridiculously priced. Since Guy Lyons and family have really taken back over the winery from people who've been working with them for some time, just a great example of what the Great Southern can do, and it's a part of the whole revitalisation and revamping and reworking of the Great Southern, which is now, with the best of their Cabernets and some of their Shirazes, is becoming one of Australia's great wine regions for a number of different reasons.
It is. We drink each week, month, year, a lot of West Australian Rieslings, and the 5 areas, sub-regions within the Great Southern, each produce markedly different and distinct styles of Riesling. Mount Barker, Albany, Denmark, Porongurup and Franklin River. I think on my page, the greatest Rieslings come from Porongurup, Franklin River and Mount Barker. But there are, of course, with every rule, exceptions to that. And this is just an exceptional wine from Mount Barker. I just love what they're doing. This also wins a lot of awards. It's often a trophy-winning wine at the wine shows, so, for good reason. Moving on to wines number 2 and 3. Now, this one you've probably never seen before, and that's totally fine. This was a very, very limited release by Grosset, only to the mailing list. There's no, you can see there's no barcode on the back. This was literally sold just to the mailing list. It's sold out. WA didn't get any. My heart is broken. The reason why I have put this wine in this lineup is because...
You haven't mentioned the name yet.
Well, I haven't got there yet. I think... Okay, fine. It's called the 2019 Grosset G110. I think this is possibly the greatest Australian Riesling that has ever been made, but you can't buy it. And since you can't buy it, we have also included the beautiful, incredible 2019 Grosset Polish Hill, because this you can buy. And it's a really interesting comparison. They're wildly different, but both highly collectible. Let's start with the Polish Hill. So in the lineup, we looked at this. This was sort of wedged in between a Porongurup Riesling and an Eden Valley Riesling, if I'm not mistaken. And this looks very ripe and intense and dense. For any Australian that loves Riesling, I'm sure you're completely familiar with Grosset Polish Hill. Pretty much everybody loves it. It's a powerhouse wine. It's a powerhouse wine. Do you agree with that? Is that incorrect?
Absolutely and totally. So if I can just for a second. So let's say, in the early days of Riesling in Australia, the great John Vickery made Australia's greatest Rieslings perhaps it started in the 50s at Leo Beering's, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and by then Brian Crozer from Petaluma was starting to produce many of Australia's greatest Rieslings. Then we jumped in by the late 1990s into the 2000s, Jeff Grosset. This man was making the greatest Rieslings in the country on a consistency basis. Maybe not every year. The others may not have done every year, but in general, they made Australia's greatest Rieslings. 2002, I know a couple of the great wine writers in the country haven't listed the 2002 as his best ever, but I reckon the 2002 was Jeff's best ever, and he's made some great wines. The 13, the 17, great wines. And then we get to the 19, and then we get to this. Whoa.
So I just did a little bit of homework last night on the reviews and points that this wine has accumulated over the last 12 years from James Halliday, and it's effectively every year in 96, 97, 98 point wine. I was 98 points on that today and just thought it was exceptional. Now this wine, I mean, so I'll tell you the story of this. Jeff Grosset's daughter Georgie suggested that he does a single clonal bottling from the vineyard. So this is like the last couple of rows lined up against this Shiraz in the vineyard, and so the G is for Georgie and the 110 is the clonal variety. This is, I mean, I'm almost lost for words because I'm remembering how it tastes, and I'm totally enamoured by it. You can see, I don't know if you can see, but in terms of colour, it's quite a bit lighter than the other Rieslings on the table. I mean, it's almost clear. The way that I would describe this, the Polish Hill is like being on a really nice boat in a beautiful bay. It's summer, there's sunshine, you're looking out across the ocean, you can see fish in the water, there's a gentle breeze. It's pretty much everything you could ask for. The G110 is like being in that same bay, in that same boat, under that same sunshine, looking through the bottom of a glass bottom boat into the ocean itself. I mean, this just soars. It is so delicate. I mean, when you put it next to this, it is so delicate and so fine and so nuanced, but there is so much flavour and crystalline purity that I was absolutely staggered by that wine. I mean, I've never tried anything like it from Australia, and I just...
Okay, so let's come at it from a different angle. I love Erin's analogies, but I've got a couple up my sleeve myself. Okay, so what we've got here is the Clare Valley and the Eden Valley forever have been Australia's greatest Riesling areas. In recent years, let's say, or until recent years, let's say that 2 or 3 of James Halliday's greatest Rieslings out of 25 have come out of the Great Southern. In 2014, 14 out of about 24 or 25 Rieslings from the Great Southern were in Halliday's top 23 or top 24 Rieslings. Beyond belief. Every year since then, James has given more high points to the Rieslings of the Great Southern than to either Clare or the Eden Valleys. Not combined, but to either of them. Now, all of a sudden, the wines from Jim Barry and his associates have got better and better reviews, and Halliday's giving them very big reviews, as are others. And now, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jeff Grosset, aka, is fighting back. He wants to make a statement that the Clare Valley, in my opinion, is making Australia's greatest Riesling and can make Australia's greatest Riesling. And I agree with Erin on this, G110, that is the greatest Australian Riesling I've ever seen, beats the 2002, which I thought was spectacular because of its great cool vintage length. This is sophisticated, elegant, long, classy, packed with flavour, brilliant finish, brilliant aftertaste, absolutely seamless, delicious flavours, which Erin can describe in a far better way than I can. This is a great wine on an international scale. I'd also like to add that in years gone by, up until recent years, Australia produced an idiosyncratically made style, a style that was only applicable to Australia. Now our wines are becoming more internationalised in style, more accepted around the world. These guys are doing a great, great job, and in this lineup are the greatest Rieslings ever made in Australian history.
That's correct. I have written on my notes, so in the links below, I've put links to a full article with tasting notes with both of our scores. I can include your scores?
Sure.
Yep, include both of our scores with full notes, so that if you actually want to know the flavours of these wines, because we're talking about what they are rather than how they taste maybe, you can read that in the article. In terms of retail prices, just to give you an idea, we're looking at 40, 65, I think.
Yes, yep.
100, like quite frankly, if this was 150, it would still be good value. $35, speaking of good value, outrageous, and 125. So if that paints a picture, I mean, Australia still makes very cheap Riesling. Very, very, very cheap. They're very good value wines.
Underpriced.
Thank you.
Seriously underpriced.
Yes. Moving into these, now we've got 2 wines by the same producer from the same vineyard in the Porongurup, which is a sub-region, as mentioned, in the Great Southern in Western Australia. The reason why we have 2 is because the 2017, which is here, was James Halliday's highest ever pointed Riesling at 99 points. The 2019 is an exceptional wine as well, but since the 2017 is not available anymore, we thought that we would talk to you about the 19, because even as an independent standalone wine on both of our sheets, this was still in the top 6 highest pointed wines in that huge tasting that we just did. So it really makes sense to talk to you about these side by side. Now, with this 17, I mean, I find it sort of difficult to say how that wine could be any better. It speaks so clearly of the Porongurup, which is always to me like a chalky white floral character on the nose, really fantastic acidity. The acidity is really entrenched in the fruit in the Porongurup, so it doesn't sit beside, it's really part of it. And there's a real succulence of fruit without ripeness. There's no ripe characters in Porongurup Riesling. It's not, you never move into stone fruit or anything. It's always very, very citrus line and precise and on point, but very powerful, and I really like that tension. So this 17, I mean, at $100, this is still an amazing wine. At $35, this is just like, if you're not buying the Dukes Magpie Hill Reserve, you have to start buying the Dukes Magpie Hill Reserve. It is unbelievable. And obviously sold out. We had to borrow this off a friend of ours out of his cellar because he cleverly bought a couple.
Borrow? Oh, sorry. He's not getting it back. Okay, so Erin and I have both had different score systems. We give different points. We're true to ourselves, and that's the way it should be, and we come at it from different angles. So for me, the Great Southern Riesling styles, especially the Porongurups, but the Great Southern in general, makes a very different style, produces a very different style to South Australia. The South Australians are fuller and stronger. They're more structured. They've got more weight and more power. Same length. The Great Southern, and especially the Porongurups, are finer, more elegant, more perfumed rather than fragrant, more lime rather than lemon lime, and they have very high acidity, 2.9, 3, 3.1, but not many of them get to 3.1 in terms of pH. But that's totally enveloped in the density of this pure, fine, elegant, classy Riesling. Now, that doesn't mean to say it's better, it's different, because we've just discussed we love Grosset. I did a Grosset tasting with a few of the guys over here a couple of years ago. We looked at 17 Polish hills, 11 water vales, and it proved conclusively that over the last 20, 25 years, Jeffrey Grosset is Australia's Riesling master. Since the advent of the quality line from Dukes Magpie Hill Reserve, I wrote an article in about late 2016 and said, has the baton been passed from Jeffrey Grosset, the great Jeffrey Grosset, to these great wines off a small plot in the Porongurups, which just must be a wonderful little plot of vines, just to produce great fruit, which I knew was the case, the baton had been passed, except suddenly Jeffrey Grosset says, Gen Z, slow down, have a look at this. This is a great wine. That is a great wine and the greatest Australian Riesling I've tried.
If you have ever been to the Duke's cellar door in the Porongurups, you will know what I mean when I say that the backdrop, as you park your car, park it in front of the building and you look at the building, and off behind it to the left, which is to the east, facing south, is part of the Stirling Range, which is a rocky outcrop. I would call it a mountain range, but it's pretty small in the world scale of mountains, but it's pretty big for WA. It's beautiful. The air is pure and crisp. There's this big kind of range out here. You're in this place that feels incredibly isolated, and it is, but in a most magnificent way. And Duke, so I proudly say that in 2011, Duke Ranson of Duke's Vineyard walked into the bottle shop that I was working at, and he came in and said, "Do you want to try my wines? I'm up. I've got them. Do you want to look at them?" And I'm, of course, like as if I would say no to looking at wine with a winemaker, and took them on, loved them, and sold them from that day forward, and have loved them ever since. And included in my homework last night when I looked at the Grosset scores, Halliday has been dishing out 97s to these, 98s, 96s, but mainly 97s for a decade.
Well, this too, the 2019, fine, elegant, long, the acid tucked away as I mentioned, fragrant, alive, truly wonderful, lovely wine. There's not much of it around. If you can see any now, grab it. Really, really good as well.
Yeah, just mainlining the dirt of the Porongurup, which is really crucial. This last wine is desperately interesting, very hard to get. Effectively, it's a collaboration between Peter Barry, so Jim Barry wines, and Ernst Loosen, Dr. Loosen wines from the Mosel in Germany. And this is one half of two wines that were made in a reciprocal style. So this was made in a Germanic way in the Clare Valley with Clare Valley fruit. So effectively what Peter and Ernst did was they said, well, Ernst said, my family's been making Riesling for generations in this style in the Mosel. And so he brought that style, the big oak casks, 2 years on lees, and they made it that way with Clare Valley fruit in the Clare Valley. So Walta is an Aboriginal name meaning good water, and this is what they've come up with. So it's a deeply interesting wine. The other half, which we did in the first tasting, and if you haven't seen it, there's a link down in the comments below, was the Valhalla, which was made in the Mosel with Mosel fruit using Australian techniques. So completely reciprocal and exciting, and the best kind of collaboration. Cellar door only. We bought this off our friend Jay Beeson, who has Old Bridge Cellars, just a little bit closer to Fremantle.
Who we do get other wines from on occasion.
Yeah, we do. He's a really amazing selection of wines. But he's friends with the Jim Barry guys, and so they gave him some of this wine to sell. So,
okay, so for me, a different style to what we normally see, perhaps a hint of sweetness tucked away in there. We've already talked about this. This is in the same class. I prefer the Grosset G110 by Whisker. I love this wine. Sophisticated, classy, complex, long, balanced, seamless, fruit right to the end, still life, just wonderful. We have never seen Rieslings of the quality of these two in this country before, and I'm a proponent of Western Australia. I'll push Western Australia if I've got the chance at all times. Sometimes you've got to face the facts, bite the bullet. These guys have done a great job. I've pointed them slightly a whisker above the 17 Magpie Hill Reserve.
Yep.
But they're my three highest pointed Australian Rieslings ever, and I've got some beauties. Jeremy Oliver and I both love the 1973 Leo Beerings. The 1973, just great wines. These are ahead of those. This is a whole new world. Australia's moving into a whole new league. I can't tell you, well, Erin tried to tell you when we first started, how wonderful these wines are. Truly great.
That sort of concludes our Riesling focus. If you're interested in looking at the full lineup of wines that we looked at today, then again, the full lineup with their points is in the article below. There are some incredible wines that we did not include, not because they're not incredible, but just because the story about apart from them being the highest pointed in this bracket, the story flows with these, and it paints a picture for you that I think is understandable and makes sense, you know. And we can tell you how great the 17 Dukes Magpie Hill Reserve is, but if you haven't had it, you're not going to know. But you can get an idea of it by looking at the 19, which is available, and that's why we've done it that way. Same goes with the Grosset. I mean, they're wildly different wines, but you can see the fruit purity and intensity in this Polish Hill, and so it will put you on the right track. I have never been prouder of Australian Riesling than I was today, and putting them side by side with Porongurup, Mount Barker, Franklin River, next to Eden Valley, Clare Valley, Mosel, we've got some Mosels, just really typified their differences and accentuated their differences, but also accentuated all of their beautiful attributes, and I just filled me with joy. I mean, I got here this morning and he was like hopping. So I haven't seen you so energised by a tasting in a long time, but truly these are incredible world-class wines. So if you're not drinking enough Australian Rieslings, fix it. Drink more Australian Riesling. It's the great variety that this country produces, and it's just not consumed enough, in my opinion.
That's a wrap. You can finish up any way you want, but great lineup. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Cheers.